What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millzy, back with Hometown Commander. And we are here today for my top 10 creatures of 2022. Now, these are not my top 10 legendary creatures of 2022. We're going to do commanders in a different list. There are one or two legendary creatures on this list. That's because I consider these to be more creatures in the 99 for me than commanders. So there are going to be a couple legendary creatures, but these are my top 10 creatures in the 99 of either decks I have or decks that I want to build for 2022. So let's get into it. We're going to do two quick honorable mentions. It was very hard to trim this list down to 10 from 12, and so I thought I would just quickly mention the bottom two, and then we'll get into the top 10. So at 12, we have Professional Facebreaker. I think this card did a lot of really cool stuff to inhibit some more, or to enable some more treasure synergies in Commander, and I think it's just a really good card, of course, seeing a lot of play in Prosper decks and things like that. But I think it has a lot of uses elsewhere. Number 11 for me, Queen Alanol of Rudak. This card sees a lot of play in my Jetmir list, as far as some other tokens decks that I've messed around with in green-white. Not a commander for me personally. I view this card more as a support card than as a commander, but I think it's one of the best cards that Jetmir got this year to help it out in its strategy, and it being a star for the number of creatures you control just ends up doing a lot more damage than we expected to. All right, number 10, Green Sleeves Morrow Sorcerer. This came out in the Commander set for Dominaria United, and this is a creature that I really like. It's a star where star is the number of lands you control, kind of like a Shaya and Multani in a lot of ways. Another one of these green elementals that is a star with the number of lands you control. But what I really like about Green Sleeves is it has a landfall ability stapled to it as well. We're not just a big star that's easy to block. We also are making 3/3 Badgers every time a land comes in, and I think Green Sleeve just enables better value. You know, we got a Shaya a year or so ago, and that was a star for 5, but it made all the rest of your creatures, non-token creatures, lands. I think Green Sleeves is up there as well in making those extra tokens and giving you more value. Number 9 is Benevolent Hydra, the newest card on this list, in that it just came out in Jumpstart 2022. But I think this Hydra is literally exactly what you'd want for your Hydra deck. It's a 2 CMC Hydra, so it's pretty cheap on that scale goes. But traditionally, those 2 CMC Hydras tend to give you more value than the 1 CMC Hydras. And we see it here immediately in this middle ability. If one or more +1/+1 counters we put on another creature you control, that many +1/+1/+1 counters are put on it instead. So we basically have a hardened scale stapled to Benevolent Hydra. And then what's cool is on the bottom, we get this remove a +1/+1 counter from it to put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature you control. And this is cool because it just kind of allows us to move these tokens around a little bit, as opposed to just keeping them on Benevolent Hydra. The reason I like that bottom ability is we saw Chishiro in Kamigawa with modified and a bunch of other things that care about counters being on things. And so I think Benevolent Hydra pushes itself out of just Hydra's decks by having that hardened scales attached and then having that bottom ability. So I really like that one. I'm excited to build a little bit more with this one. Number 8, Third Path Iconoclast from Brothers War. Probably one of 2 uncommons on the list, not very many. But I think what I really like about this is it is almost a strictly better Young Pyromancer, depending on what deck you're playing. So for me, this is an auto-include in decks like Galazeth or Kess, where you can use the fact that this token is an artifact to do different things than you could if it was just a token creature. So I think that boosts this card up at least a little bit more to me than a Young Pyromancer, because so many red-blue decks already care about artifacts or can manipulate artifacts. And then when you add the third color going into Jeskai or into Grixis, I just think the artifact nature of the token probably pushes this card a little bit forward for me over Young Pyromancer. And for that reason, I'm very happy that we got it. At number 7, we have a Magnus the Red from the Chaos Warhammer 40k deck. To me, I don't think I would ever run Magnus as a commander, but I think Magnus fits really well in all of these red-blue spell-slinging decks, or even a red-blue X spell-slinging deck. Because so many of those spell-slinging decks already want to make tokens anyway with things like Young Pyromancer or those that we just talked about, Shark Typhoon. You know, there's plenty of ways you can make tokens when you're casting spells. And so Magnus basically gives us that reduction. And then, of course, when it deals damage, it makes us tokens. I think Magnus can see more 99 play outside of just a red blue spell slinging deck. I think if you go into the red blue plus any other color spell slinging deck, I think Magnus is still really useful. This looks like a slam dunk in a Kess deck or a Kaikar list, lists like that where you can still gain a lot of value from it. And so for that reason, I think Magnus the Red is a really cool card. And I'm trying my best to slam it in as many of my spell slinging lists as I can. Number 6, Juka Naturalist. If you know anything about me, I love my enchantment decks. And Juka Naturalist went into 2 decks immediately when I saw it. One, Sithis. I think this is a perfect card for that deck. It makes your enchantments even cheaper, and it's an enchantment itself, so you get all of those beautiful procs. But the second is what would eventually change from my Sisei to Go Shintai Shrines list. I think Juka Naturalist is really great for that deck. It's an enchantment, so if you're still playing all of that Enchantress types effects in that deck, which you're going to, you're still going to draw or generate value off of this. But I think you go ahead and reduce those shrines 1 more as well, which just helps you with some of those shrines that are higher up on the CMC scale. So I love Juka Naturalist. One of my favorite cards. Love that we got the pretty promo print for it as well. Number 5, Astral Dragon. Man, it was going to be very hard to not have more than one dragon on this list. We'll talk more when we get to my top 10 commanders list, but Miram was a deck that I built this year and absolutely loved. So it's going to be tough to not put a second dragon on this list other than our number 1 pick, which we'll get to here in a second. But I think the obvious choice is Astral Dragon just because it adds a little bit of combo fun. Astral Dragon with Miram and a copy of Doubling Season or Parallel Lives creates a really fun combo to get a bunch of creatures out. And if you have a Dragon Tempest or a Perforos or anything like that, it just starts enabling good damage to your opponents. Not only that, I think it's a little overcosted as an 8 mana for a 4/4, but coming in and making 2 copies of a non-creature permanent and making them creatures just enables a ton of combos. And I think the combos are really endless depending on what you need in your deck. This doesn't just go into Miram for me. I actually have this in my Emoti Cascade list as well, and I think it does just as good. Number 4, we have Carlock, Fury of Avernus. I love this card. First, because I love extra combats. I think extra combats are so much fun. It's already hard enough sometimes for a combat deck that isn't overrunning your opponent quickly to win the game sometimes, and I think Carlock not only helps those Gruul combat decks do that, but I think this is a cool card to help those Boros and other decks get that extra combat, give your creatures first strike until end of turn, which is cool, and then give another combat. I think this card will see lots of play in plenty of not only extra combat decks, but Boros attacking decks and things like that. And although I don't think this will see as much play as a commander with a background, I think it'll see lots of 99 play, and I love it for that reason. Number 3, it was going to be very tough to not put this card on this list. I cut my teeth in my early years playing commander on mono green decks and green heavy decks, and the joke nowadays, if you haven't watched my deck techs on the channel, is that every time I see a new green creature, I ask, does it go in my Goreclaw list? And Defiler Vigor was a very obvious yes to that question. A 6/6 for 5 mana that lets you pay 2 life instead of a green pip on any green permanent you want to pay. And then whenever you cast a green permanent spell, you put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. We have basically a Cathar's Crusade on a green creature. And I don't think it gets any better than this. Any green X creature deck is probably going to want Defiler of Vigor to maximize the value that you can get out of it. I really do truly love this card. It was a card that I picked up right away in the hopes that it doesn't just go in Goreclaw, but it goes in other decks. But I think any mono green deck absolutely wants this card. And any green X card that cares, any green X deck that cares, green blue or green red or red or green black that cares about creatures, I think you really want this card as well. I think the whole Defiler cycle is really cool, but it's pretty obvious to me that Defiler of Vigor is the best. Number 2, if you had told me that this card would be number 2 in this list when the year started, I would say, ew, no, I hate Jenga Taxes. Why would you tell me that this card would be up there? But I have to admit, I loved Wizards revisiting all of these Praetors, making new versions of them. I would say Vorinclex is probably my favorite of the new Praetors, but of course Vorinclex was not released this year. We only had 3 released this year. So there weren't as many choices as that goes, but I think the one lesson I learned with Jimmy G here, Jenga Taxes, was just what it can do for advantage in a game of Commander. When you drop a Jenga Taxes down on your turn, your opponents have to work together to remove it, because it's gonna negate the first spell that's cast each turn, and that is each turn. So if your opponent owns, goes to try to only play one, that first artifact, instant, or sorcery spell on their turn, it's going to get countered. Now, that doesn't affect their creatures or their enchantments or anything like that, but I mean, it's going to stop that first piece of removal that you're going to try to use against it. And then the best part is you get to copy your first spell you cast of that type. This went immediately into my Kess list, as well as my like Kaikar spells list. I think Jenga Tax is a ton of fun, and it also went in Modi as well. But I think it packs so much value for 7 mana, and it's one of those cards that's going to make the entire table stop and go, what is that? We need to get rid of it. And I think that's what you want from a Praetor, right? These massive creatures that are known for how much influence they have in the Magic world. And I love seeing it on Jenga Tax, and I absolutely love this art. I love the glow frame. I love the way he looks. Even though Jenga Tax is a scary character, I love the way the card looks. And I'm happy to be using it in the decks that it's in. The number one pick to me was kind of a no-brainer. I've already disclosed with Astral Dragon that I built a Mirim deck this year, as well as I've also worked on a Clouth Dragons list, and ever since that card came out in the Adventure of the Forgotten Realms Commander decks. But to me, the Ancient Dragon Cycle is exactly what I'd want out of an Ancient Dragon Cycle. It's very tough to say that after we got Old Gnawbone and things like that in Adventure of Forgotten Realms, but I've been wondering, how else are they going to make a good Dragon Cycle that really shows? We saw a Dragon Cycle in Kamigawa, and yes, they were cool, but to me, they didn't hit how I expected them to hit. But the Ancient ones are almost all great. I mean, the green one is my least favorite. Copper Dragon is definitely my favorite. Roll a d20, get that many treasures. If you roll over even a 6, in my opinion, it's just going to take over. That amount of mana is just going to take over a game, get you farther ahead, do the things like that. I also really love Ancient Silver Dragon, but I didn't want to put it on this list because there was other creatures that I wanted to include on this list above it, even though I really like Ancient Silver Dragon. But to me, the top spot on this list really belongs to those 5 Ancient Dragons together. I think they're all really cool. They all have their uses, and I can't wait to try to fit them into more decks. But guys, that is my top 10 parentheses 12 creatures of 2022. What do you guys think? What is your favorite creature of 2022? I would love to know. Let me know down in the comments. Give me a like and subscribe if you want to see more top 10 videos or a bunch of the brews I have going on the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you next time.